set up the game of Pen and Paper Connect 4, first, get a sheet of paper and a writing utensil. Next, draw a basic grid on your piece of paper. The grid should be 6 spaces high and 7 spaces wide. To save paper, you can fit several games on the same piece by either splitting the paper in half and putting 2 grids on the paper, or splitting the paper into quarters and placing 4 grids on the paper. Next, each player will indicate the bottom of the grid on their paper. The bottom will be along the part of the grid that is 7 spaces wide. They can do this by drawing a thick line on the bottom of the grid. Players can also write bottom on the paper to make the bottom easier to locate. After creating the grid, each player will decide on their symbol they will use during the game. This will be the way that they indicate their moves on the grid. One player will play with X's, and the other will play with O's. If you happen to have colors, each player can choose a distinct color as their writing utensil, and players can shade in boxes with their color during the game. If they would like to add a bit more challenge to the game, they could use similar letters, such as one player using M and the other using a W. The challenge comes from the fact that M and W can look similar on the grid. After the basic grid has been drawn, and each player has chosen their player symbol, players are ready to start the game. The game of Pen and Paper Connect 4 is a game where each player is trying to be the first to make a consecutive line of 4 of their symbols. The symbols can be in a line horizontally, in a line vertically, or in a line diagonally. To start the game, first, a start player will be established. The start player will draw their symbol inside of any one square on the bottom row of the grid. After the start player chooses where to place their first symbol, the other player will draw their first symbol on the grid. This player can either draw their symbol inside of an empty space on the bottom row, or within a square directly over the other player's first symbol. While playing, players can imagine their symbols as pieces that are being pulled by gravity towards the bottom of the grid. So a player could not place their symbol here, because there is no symbol below it to hold it in place. After the second player places their symbol, the start player will take their next turn. Once again, they can either place their symbol in an open space on the bottom row, or in the box directly above another symbol. After they play, the other player will place one of their symbols, using the same rules. Players will continue the game in this way, taking turns and placing one of their symbols on the grid. As the game moves on, players will keep track of their symbols on the grid. The first player to get 4 of their symbols in a row, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, and notice it, will call out Connect 4. They will then show their opponent where the 4 symbols are on the grid. The first player to get 4 of their symbols in a row and call it out will be the winner. As mentioned, the player must notice that they have connected 4 of their symbols. Therefore, it is possible for a player to miss that they completed this task. If a player misses it at first, they may call out Connect 4 at any time when they do notice their 4 symbols in a row, even if it isn't their turn. But this also means that the other player could still win, even if they are not the first one to connect 4 of their symbols. So if this player had connected 4 of their X's here, but had not noticed it, and had not called out Connect 4, this player could play their O here, call out Connect 4, and still win the game. The winner will always be the first player to notice their 4 symbols that they connected. It is possible for the game to end without a winner. If the last space is filled on the grid, and no player has called out Connect 4, the game ends in a draw. Before declaring the game a draw, players should inspect the grid carefully. It is possible that a player missed their Connect 4 somewhere on the grid. If they find one, they can still call it out and still win the game.